Hey everybody, and welcome to TekFlow for Construction, brought to you by ZenTech Consultants. TekFlow for Construction is a recurring videocast where we talk about the best tech practices and procedures that we've been implementing for ZenTech clients, ones that we think everybody should be looking to include in their own workflows. I am Jim Coppinger, one of the principals here at ZenTech Consultants, and today I want to talk to you guys about working with revisions. Throughout this videocast series, we've talked a lot about working with construction project management systems, particularly the online cloud-based ones. And one of the things that we run into all the time on every single job, without exception, is that changes are going to happen, right? No matter what it is, doesn't matter if it's drawing, specs, bids, whatever. There are always updates and changes and revisions to all of the files and documentation that we need to work with on any of our construction jobs. And part of that is not just overwriting the file, right? We've talked in previous sessions of this videocast series about the necessity of keeping the latest and greatest available to everybody, but we need to make sure that we also have the older versions of any drawing document or contract or whatever that are in place, available for people to read and access so that they know where the changes occurred and why those changes occurred. And the great thing is that these modern construction management systems that we deal with all the time, when we're going to focus on the big ones, we always do, Procore and, Autodesk Construction Cloud and, Bluebeam Studio and SharePoint and all of those. We're going to talk about all of those today. But all of them have this functionality where we can maintain copies of the older files right in place so that everybody dealing with our project management system can access them for reference or printing, whatever they need, right? Without having to go through the process of manually copying them and renaming them and say, out of date, version 1, putting them in subfolders, all those things we did for many years. All right, so let's go ahead and let's start here with Bluebeam Review, which really, when we're dealing with Bluebeam Studio, and I've just opened up this example project here, I really like the way that this functions. It's a very simple to use revisioning system, right? That every time we go in on any document, and if we make changes to it, and we've talked in previous versions about the check-in, check-out process, but the same thing, anytime we add files that have the same file name, anytime we bring in new updated versions of a file, and we can just drag and drop them in here, we can just right click on the file and go to the revision history. And you'll see that every time we add a file or make a change or an edit to file, that Studio is automatically keeping copies of the older versions. And I can go back to any named or dated item, and I can actually go ahead and I can do two things, right? I can actually open up that revision for read only, just to view it or print it, see what was going on. I can zoom and go in, but I can't edit it. The other thing that I can do, which I do like about the way Studio handles this, is that I can restore that revision. In other words, right now we're up to 18 revisions, but if I needed for some reason to go back and we were going to say, hey, we're going to revert back to the to the version 6, I can just click on it and say, hey, restore that revision. Right? And you see that it automatically creates a version 19, and it even tells me this was restored from revision 6, and it opens it up for me to kind of take a look at there in the background, right, in a read-only state, so I can see what my changes are now. So it's a very easy thing to keep track of all the edits and modifications throughout the lifespan of this. And the other thing that I do like about working this in Bluebeam Studio, I think more than any other system, is that when you're dealing with most systems, you do have to be concerned about storage space and fees and costs and how long things will be housed. And the great thing about this is that Bluebeam Studio is unlimited storage. I don't care if there are 3,000 different versions of the same file. I'm not being charged for that in any way, shape, or form. There's no limit on how much I can put out here. So I think that's really important. I'm a big fan of that. So let's go take a look at some of the other systems that we can work with here. So when you go and you get into Procore, right, we can do kind of the same thing. So for example, we've got this particular drawing file here, this 3D PDF example. And we can go over and we can go to the Info tab on here, and you can see that there are two versions of it right now, two older versions. But what I want to show you is that when we're dealing with the same concept, right? When we get in revisions or updates from architects or engineer, whoever it is, what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag and drop that same 3D PDF example file, right, from my desktop that I just got it emailed to me from the architect. I can just drop it into the project. And you see that automatically it gives me the ability to either upload this as a new version of that file, right, or I can rename it and upload it as a different file. I'm just going to go ahead and say upload it as a new version. I'm just going to continue upload, right, and it takes a second while it uploads the file. But you'll see that now automatically down here, right, where before it said version 2, now it's version 3, and you see it's keeping all the older versions of this for me, right? And at any point I can go in and I can just hover over this. You see I get this download button, so I can actually download these versions to my local machine to open them and review them with no problem. One other thing that we can do here in Procore, if we want to just right click on the file, one of the things we can do is we can just say new version, right? And what that will do is it will download the particular file to our local machine so that we can open it and edit it with whatever local install tool we have, Word or Excel, and then we're done. We can just drag and drop it back in for the same functionality. So it just kind of puts it in a state where it's looking for a new and updated version. It bypasses that manual box. When we get over into tools like the Autodesk Construction Cloud, you'll see that we get almost the exact same functionality here. So if we go to my project folder structure here, and I'm going to go to my estimates, right here on the side, and you see that I actually do have a file in here, right, that is called estimates right here. There it is. Right, for some reason I couldn't quite see it, didn't want to appear on my screen there. Right, but I can do almost exactly the same thing when I'm dealing with the estimate file. Right, you see that right now it's V2. I've got version 2 of it sitting right here. Right, but if I go in again, I'm going to go to my desktop and I'm going to grab the estimate CSV file, the latest updated version that I got from my estimator or a contractor, and you see I can just drag it and drop it in, and here I don't have to do anything because it has the same name. Okay, it automatically recognizes because it is the same name. Right, you see that it automatically went from version 2 to version 3. Right, and then I can easily go in and I can click on those, and here are all the different versions. And same thing, I can copy them, download the source file for editing and review. Right, I can make it the current version so I can revert back to version 1, 2, or 3, whichever one I need to use. Right, so it's a very easy process inside of Construction Cloud. You get all the same kind of functionality, and we can even do this when we get into dealing with basic SharePoint setup. Okay. So we can easily go in on any project, just go browse to a particular file, right, whatever it is that you're working with, right, and you can do exactly the same thing, right? So if I go in and say we've got, we'll use this master file PDF that I have right here, right? If I've got that master file PDF, right, and I want to do the updates and the revisions, right, same exact kind of setup. That the only thing I need to do here is I can go to these little ellipses right here, and you see that it will give me the version history. It shows me all the previous versions of it. So if I click on that, you can see that here in SharePoint, my version history for this, I've got 5 versions of this file that I've worked with in the past. Right? Same exact thing. I can go in, I can edit it and save it, or I can do the check-in, check-out process, and it'll automatically add a new versioning for me. But I can do the same thing in terms of just adding the same file. I'm just going to drag and drop the master file in, right, from my desktop into here, right, and you see same concept. It says, okay, a file with this name already exists, right, so I can either keep them both with different names or I can just replace that one. Okay, so you see that now that it's been replaced, now if I go into my version history, where before we had 5, we now have 6, right, and you see that at any point I can go down and I can download, view, restore any of the older versions. So it's really a very, very simple process for us here inside of any of these modern project management, construction management systems for us to be able to go in and control all of the revision files so that they stay in place and are very easy for anybody to access with a simple right click on a file name. They can look at all the older edits and changes and why things got modified and so on. So simple process, but it's the kind of tool that people tend to overlook, and those are the kind of things we tend to focus on here in TekFlow for construction.